All right, hello everybody. This is the work group device management meeting for December 10th, 2024. Probably our last meeting of the of 2024. So um, let's get started. And we have a little bit smaller group, but it's a decent size, so I think we can make some progress today. Let me display the agenda.
And I think what we probably need is our project board, because that's what we're going to talk about today. Open issues where we know that we need to discuss who's doing what and when, and getting those issues assigned to people so that we know who is going to do some work for 133. And I did look at the issues that we have open. So we have a sorted column on the left with new issues that still need to be discussed. And I already went ahead and assigned myself to the 3 issues or 3 aspects that I want to work on myself. 2 are just code quality things that I see on the critical path towards GA, which I kind of hope to get done this year. The first one is the seamless kubelet plugin upgrade. The problem is that kubelet also with device plugins has the same problems. You can do a daemon set with rolling updates, and you have 2 plugins running at the same time, two pods, and then kubelet needs to decide which one is the more recent one that it should be talking to. And that's currently not at all solved for device plugins, for CSI drivers. My hope is that we can define something that works for DRA. So that's what this issue is about. If there are no further...
Is that okay? So that's would this solve it for a device plugin too, or just for DRA?
No, it's a part of the API between the plugin and the kubelet. It would be for DRA. I don't know how to make that possible for device plugins without breaking existing plugins.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we? Yeah. Okay. Great.
We could just move that to ready, and I can set a milestone after the meeting to indicate that this is for 132.
Yeah. And this is
the version
does this need a cap, or does this is this?
No, I think that's just code development. I don't. We can document it in the cap for structured parameters for core DRA, but I don't think it needs a new cap.
Good. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. At least that's my current thinking. We may have to think about what it means for device plugin or for DRA drivers who don't know yet about some new requirement, but I think they are fine. They need to advertise something in the supported versions field, and we can make it so that it's backwards compatible. I'm fairly sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, do you want to go over? Yeah, any others here? Because I know you have a limited time.
Yeah, the version skew testing, that is something that is asked for in our cap, and we don't have good SIG testing infrastructure for doing it. I have some ideas how to do it, and I want to use DRA as the canary for automating this version skew testing that you're supposed to do for all features essentially. So that is another issue that I think I can tackle, and we can just move it to ready unless someone has some very strong thoughts about it.
That becomes so do we want these to become GA criteria? Like, one of the questions I have is what are, like, I don't think we're going to make GA in 133. I don't think we should try, really.
Yeah.
And so we should, but what we should do come out of 133 is a very clear punch list of what we need to make GA.
I think those are GA. Well, one is kind of implied. The version skew testing is something that you need to do for any feature, whether we automate it or not. Well, we don't need to automate it, but that means someone needs to do it manually and should repeat that. So I think it's easier to just automate it.
Okay. I see you have one other one you've assigned to yourself.
Yeah, and that is a new feature. That is a cap that needs to be turned into a cap. We had already a good discussion in that issue what the scope of that cap should be. It's basically about doing something better than what we do right now, where we say that a DRA driver needs to remove a device from a resource slice. This issue is also about third-party components being able to mark a device as not usable, and doesn't necessarily need to be because of device health. It could also be in maintenance if a cluster admin needs to do something. And there are some things in that issue about how to do that, probably with a new type. But that is all, I think, worthy of a new cap, and I intend to write that cap and drive the implementation.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'll let you continue, and then I have.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There is perhaps one more that we can just talk about, and that is the competition between schedulers and allocators. I would put that into our backlog. It is this idea, or this addresses the concern that we had about two schedulers in a cluster with sharding and network attached devices, where both schedulers might pick those network attached devices for themselves, or it is between different schedulers targeting the same node, perhaps where one scheduler is doing something fancy. But that already gets a bit problematic also for CPU and RAM. So overall, I think this is still not a very high priority. I would
Okay,
just put it into our backlog.
I would agree. Yeah, I do think it's the network device one is probably, so one of the things we are looking at is Kevin's got an example he showed in Salt Lake City of a network device. I have some
Yep.
other ideas of combining
And
node selectors with partitionable to create blocks of nodes. So this could become an issue, but I don't think
yeah.
it's urgent yet.
And I think for Kevin's use case, it's perfectly fine, because probably there is one scheduler that owns that entire rack where they have the network hardware and the corresponding GPU. So it's still one scheduler owning that entire piece of hardware that it's allocating
For
from.
mine as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
For my use case, it's the same thing. It would be they're specific nodes that get plugged into the thing, so they would be owned by that scheduler. Um,
Let's see what
so
else we can move. I think the helper code for checking device allocations that already has an owner. It's assigned, so we could move it to ready or in progress. I think actually in progress is the right thing to do. Um, and this is something that will show up as something that the array driver developers need to consider at some point, but it's not in that sense strictly a core DRA or core Kubernetes feature. It's just about improving quality of the array drivers.
okay, okay. Um, so this is one that I added. It's gonna take a lot of discussion. I sort of don't expect it to be in 133. What I would hope, though, is for us to make progress on coming to a common design and understanding, and making sure that what we do deliver in 133 kind of allows for expansion according to what we're talking about here with scoring. So I'll put it into backlog for now. I think we have a lot more discussion to do there.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think the same applies to some of the other caps that we have in alpha right now. I think they are fine in the backlog for 133. I don't see that we need to do anything for the existing caps right now. The
beyond, so you've got you're talking about there's two that we have. Let's see, this is okay. This is already in progress, and then there's this one. Okay, these are in progress. Okay, those are the two. So from my point of view, like I had a sort of a summary here of the things that I thought we might want to do. Um, Before we jump in there, though, I'm going to take an opportunity. Did you want to go through the board more, Patrick, or?
well, we can look at some of the open issues. So some other issues are from our example driver. And I think all of those are things that could be picked up by new contributors, essentially. These are not things that are on the critical path for anything. So there is a bit more flexibility regarding timing. It's also not bound by our Kubernetes deadlines.
Right.
we could just put them into the backlog, or we
Yeah.
could actually put them into ready. I think ready is the column that I envisioned to be used for things that could be worked on right now, but don't have an owner yet.
Okay, maybe we should put help wanted on all of them.
So they are currently new because I wanted to use the opportunity at some point to talk about them perhaps, but that also can be done in the issues. So we could just move them to ready
all of
and
these example driver ones.
yeah, I think so. I see one actually
this-
has already a help wanted. So whoever watches the recording and is looking for work in the DRA driver space area, the example driver is probably a good starting point. That's the point.
These are already approved. They probably should be moved to in progress, right? Somebody must be working on them. Do you know?
Yeah, okay. I think we need to check. I don't know.
It looks
Yeah.
like Kevin already did.
These
Yeah,
these are PRs. Yeah, these are PRs that I think Kevin started working on. So they actually go into in progress, and
Yeah.
I missed that these are PRs. They got added to the board I think before or today or yesterday, and I hadn't actually tried them.
What's this one?
This is you can archive it. So if you click on the dots, the three dots, you will see an option for archival. This happens when someone touches any code that we own and it gets this device management label automatically and it shows up in our board, but these are not specifically DRA issues that we need to track in this meeting. So
that only archives it for our board, right?
yes. And
earlier
I tried deleting it from the board, but then it came back whenever someone did an update to a PR. The archive thing is the one that makes it permanent.
Okay, awesome. Looks like Jack has a hand.
Yeah, real quick, and then I'll knock off my agenda item from later on. So talking about DRA example driver, would there be any controversy around the idea of expanding the scope of documentation that surrounds those examples? Maybe like having a markdown file per YAML to sort of go into more detail about what this scenario does, why you might use this example, and then furthermore, I would love to be able to reference to potential customers who are kicking the tires with DRA, what the A/B comparison is between device plugin and DRA for those examples that have a device plugin equivalent. So does expanding the scope of supporting information around these examples, is there an appetite for that if we just dove in and started adding?
That would be great. Yes.
Okay, great. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, you won't get any complaints about making things clearer for customers and users, and yeah, love it. We have one other new item. Antonia, do you want to talk about this one?
Which one?
Cluster resource.
That's not Antonio.
I know, but I don't know if the person is here.
Okay, yeah, that's. I think it was originally someone else, and Antonio commented on it. So
that's why.
Yeah, I was checking. I don't have clear from. I mean, I think that the current APIs allow us to do what they want. But I think that is related to what Jan mentioned. We need to start to put scenarios and information and consolidating, because it's what they are suggesting. I think that they can do it with what we have now, but this is very vague information.
Yeah, they do it. They now have a Google Doc linked in their issue with more details. We would just need to, probably check out the Google Doc and have continue the discussion.
I already checked. Yeah, and it's not very. I mean, it's only high level sentences, but definitely a lot of people requesting features, but all this information is coming widespread from different communities for different people. So I think that we need to consolidate, and maybe this proposal to add documentation can serve as a central point of information, and then we can obtain themes and understand well the mechanics of and the use cases of everybody.
Yeah. So I think bottom line is we need to keep that in you until we have a clearer understanding of what's actionable for it, whether it
Okay.
belongs into the backlog, whether it's ready, and what the next step should be.
So if I can ask Patrick, since you set up the board and everything, like what is your criteria, for like moving either from to backlog or ready?
Yeah, in some cases when it's obvious, I've just moved things where they belong, in my opinion. But for the things where I'm not certain, I think we can keep them in new, and we just need to remember. Well, we need to at some point we need to empty the new queue. I just don't think we can do that for this particular issue here right now because the author isn't here, and it would need more discussion than we have time for today.
Okay, no, sounds great. I just wanted to make sure we're following the same. Like if you're not here, I don't want to do something and cause, Okay, awesome. So my thinking is the next step would be to jump over to the agenda, and there's a couple other items. They're very related. Is there anything else we want to do here before we do that, Patrick? I don't want to cut you
No,
off.
I think that I had everything on that board that I wanted to discuss, and I'm fine. So we can now look at the things that are missing, like your list, and see what
my
needs
list
to be added. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So my list is a little bit more about like the core things I wanted to move, the core caps I wanted to move through. Before I jump into that, I saw Olivier's here. I don't know, Olivier is here. I don't know if Abhishek is, but Abhishek had put together a document. I just wanted to call attention to it, where we're trying to document different partitionable device models. The NVIDIA MIG model is already well documented in the partitionable device cap, but we know there's other technologies. So I think it's me or probably me, putting in TPUs. There's also a use case for multi-node TPU that I want to use partitionable for because we have different topologies that are valid. I would love it if, I don't know if somebody from AWS or Azure, if there's some things with the different chips that each cloud provider has. I think somebody from AWS did put some things in there. So just calling attention to anybody who's here or on the recording to go into that document, this one here, and if you can review it, see if we're capturing these. We want to make sure that whatever we build, which we have kind of a partial implementation already, whatever we build can satisfy the requirements of all these different technologies. That said, the 133 planning, as we were just discussing, there's a bunch of issues on the board. Some of those issues are related to specific caps we have. And so these specific items are the things that I was thinking would be potentially get to new alphas. One is this first one here. This slipped from 132. This is an existing feature that was implemented for device plugin, but not yet for DRA. I believe we're on track to do that. I talked to Sergey the other day. He said he's got somebody working on it. So I think this time we'll make it. Partitionable devices I just mentioned. We have a partial implementation. Patrick did some work on this. Kevin's done some work on this, and Morton's going to do some more work on it. It's going to change because at the very least I have I think Jack, you were involved in that conversation on Slack. I want to add probably a node selector to each partition, which solves not all the problems, but part of the problems for doing multi-node partitioning. So that's going to change, but I think that's well underway to get to alpha. The next one, actually, this is already implemented. I need to review it. There'll probably be some API tweaks. This is the prioritized list. So this is the one that's kind of a bigger open question. It's just an issue right now with just some comments. There's no KEP written. There's not even a Google Doc or anything. But it kind of feeds in to some of these other ones. When you have partitionable devices, when you have prioritized lists of devices, it opens up a lot of options. And so we need a way to influence which option the scheduler chooses. The current proposal here is this one. So I would ask that anybody here or on the recording drill into this issue, take a look at the comments there. There's quite a lot of discussion already. This could be very large scope. And so we need to sort out whether there's any of it we can get into 133, or if not, at least be prepared for 134. The last item I wanted to raise is something I just put in here, and I just kind of want to initiate discussion on it. Kevin's talked in the past of linked claims. I'm not sure if this is the same concept he was talking about or not, and he's not here to discuss it, Kevin Clues. But the idea here is that if you think about right now, we have this great mechanism of what we call user-mediated sharing. So I can allocate a resource claim that holds on to a GPU, say, and then I can, as a user, I can put multiple pods at it, and I can share it amongst those pods in that mechanism. But what there isn't is any sort of way to control that sharing other than the user having to do it. So the simplest example would be, I want to allocate a resource claim, and at the time I allocate it, I want to limit the number of pods that can share it, or I want to limit it based on some consumption values associated with the underlying device. So this could be implemented. So then when somebody tries to point a pod at it, if it's already consumed, it can't do it. Now, the sort of natural next step is scheduling things against that, as opposed. So I could essentially pre-allocate sets of devices or resources, and then I could allow requests to be satisfied by existing resource claims, but regulated by some sort of control. So the reason I get there is going back to the stuff, Jack, you and I were discussing on Slack. If you have, say, a 4-node partition, so we're not talking about a sub device here. We're talking about multi-node. We've got 4 nodes. They all work together. They're connected in a certain topology. I can consume them all at once. I can consume them in 2x2s, or I can consume them in 1x1s. If I consume a 1, then there's still 2 2x2s available, but there's not the 2 1x2s available, but not the 2x2, right? So, so let's say I consume the 2x2, all 4 nodes. Then I'm scheduling pods one at a time. I go to schedule the first pod. It uses this resource claim against this 2x2 set of nodes, and that's great. We get constrained to that 2x2 set of nodes, and the pod lands on one of those nodes. Second pod comes along. If we don't have a way to say that node is consumed, like if we don't have some other resource that's forcing the pod onto the second node, we could end up scheduling to the first node again, which wouldn't be what we want. So we could do it with anti-affinity. There's other ways we could do it. Like we can work around it. We don't need this immediately, but it's, I think it's a pathway towards platform mediated sharing that we've been kind of dancing around for 6 months or a year. So that's the idea.
Longer. It's even longer. We had it in the original DRA. There was a shareable attribute.
Remember that.
And we removed it because it wasn't clearly articulated what it's for. It seems like it now has use cases, and we will probably need something a bit more than we already originally had. So it's good that we dropped it and now can bring it back in a more controlled fashion. But yeah, I think it needs a cap, and definitely needs a cap and more thought.
Anyway, sorry, you guys go.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, can the next step, can we systematically start producing a set of what these specific scenarios look like? I especially like the way that you call out that like some of this, we can do this with pod affinity and anti-affinity and composing all this stuff together. I feel like for me, the best way to start to develop some confident opinions about how we could actually improve this would be to poke at what we can do now and see, okay, this is really, the ergonomics are really terrible here and here and here. Like this is the sort of top priority of what we can improve. Because that's, in my experience, that's what customers are looking at is they want a clear value proposition for why they're going to like break their APIs and adopt some new thing.
Yes,
So if we could
totally.
start with some super concrete examples of like, this is the gnarly way you can do it now, maybe that then can matriculate into a KEP in terms of like informing what we want to actually propose for a new API.
Okay, yeah. That makes perfect sense. So I just wanted to introduce the thought here. Anybody who's interested in being involved in that process, put your name down. I'll put my own name down. And we can work together to try and start that process. So, okay. So those are the alphas. I probably should have gone backwards and started with the GA. I think we won't do GA. I don't think it makes sense to even try for 133. So I'm going backwards now from possible stable GA. So we mentioned earlier, I think what we do want to come out of 133 with clear punch list of GA criteria. We did discuss, for those of you who are in Salt Lake City or not there, maybe are more interested in hearing, we did discuss there a few additional GA criteria, which I've got captured somewhere in a notes document, and I'll try to update the KEP with them. But I think we'll, yeah, we need to get through the rest of that. So then the only other thing is whether we can beta the KEP on the possible standard or the resource claim status. I don't know if we have Lionel here. Let me look at my list of participants. Otherwise, I don't know if Lionel's not here. If Antonio, you have any thoughts? Do you think we'd be able to make it this one to beta this cycle?
The device status, I need to check with Lionel that he's driving this and his availability. I mean, everybody is a bit busy after QCon. So when is the next meeting we have?
Question. Next meeting would be, I think, like Christmas Eve. I will be out. I think you will be out, you said. So I think we're probably going to cancel that meeting. So the next.
I mean, the KEP is very simple, right? But the thing is, we need some proof of adoption. So the guys in the CNI group created a report to start creating the driver. So I will not go to beta if we don't have implementations, because then if we have a problem with APIs, we break. So I will. You can assign that to me, and I will start chasing people to see who is implementing and who is not. And once I'm confident people is implementing the APIs, I will come back to the group and update the KEP. Jack, are you developing a plugin using these APIs?
Stand by.
Okay, so
Stay
we
tuned.
are okay. But I think that we need something, right? Otherwise, if we release something and it's not used, we are in trouble in beta.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's just more discovery. So we don't have any plans right now to develop any concrete plugins, but as we discover the potential set of capabilities, then things can become more compelling.
No,
So-
I don't worry about that. I will chase people. I know people is interested, but I just I will try to chase the people and find a group and move this forward. I will pin you if.
I think it's okay. It can wait another cycle. It's just more like just trying to getting out of alpha means people can start to a little bit rely on it, at least. When it's an alpha, it's basically hard to make use of. All right, I think that's it for me. Jack, did we cover what you wanted to, or you have more you wanted to say
Yep.
here?
Great.
Okay, and then are there any other topics people want to raise since we do have some time? Otherwise, we'll call it early. I'll give people a minute though to answer that.
Wait,
question.
can you guys hear me? Oh. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, Rita, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, so related to, I know you guys were just talking about the cross-node scheduling thing. I think on Slack you mentioned that there were actually multiple conversations, or there have been many discussions about this in the past. I'm kind of curious, what were some of the sort of like options you've considered? Specifically, I'm trying to understand like, because I was looking at a cap around the constraints that were introduced to resource claims. So I'm curious if there were any thoughts around how to use that for cross-node, multi-node resource claims.
Yeah, so I don't think, so the multi-node area, I guess what I meant, I don't remember exactly what I said in Slack. What I probably meant was I've had discussions with people internally and at KubeCon and whatever. I don't know that there's any, they're documented or they're that clear. What we do have is, this was not a focus of our initial development for DRA. It was well, we're going to have a node there. We'll make it a node selector. We do know there are some network use cases for a resource slice, right? Like we do know there are some cases like NTT and there's another company I spoke with from Japan that has a Fujitsu, I think. I think they talked in the meeting the other day. Right? They have the big auto scaling meeting I heard. They have disaggregated, disaggregated like hot pluggable GPUs or other similar type of environments. I think the NTT case they talked about at KubeCon was chaining different FPGA functions. Like, so there's different things people want to do that aren't tied directly to a node because they have like a PCI switch or and they can kind of move these devices around from node to node. The only support we have today to kind of make something like that work is that the resource slice has a node selector rather than a node, right? That's it. That's all we have. There's nothing else API wise to support it. Anything else you have to do, put your own machinery together that builds on top of that very small API. I think that with the discussion we had on Slack was more for my specific use case that I wanted to leverage what's there and what we're working on for partitionable. So with my particular use case for TPUs, right, there's a topology of connectivity between the TPUs in different nodes. And it's somewhat programmable, but there's physical limits. And so I can take subsets of nodes and make them sort of act as one giant device. I think you probably have something similar, right? And so I can leverage what we have and what we're already planning to do that. To say that I've made a thorough investigation of whether that's absolutely the best way to do it, I can't answer that because some of this is that would take, I would need another year to deliver something, right? So because like I'm talking about adding on things that are already there and already in flight. We probably should do that. That would be the right thing to do, maybe in parallel. Yeah, I don't have other ideas at this point for how to do that. If that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I was just curious, like what prior, in case you've already looked at it, and what were some reasons, like maybe not to do it, right? Specifically the example that you talked about in like the KubeCon talk, where the constraint was used to ensure that two devices on the same node would be used.
I see what that's right. You were asking.
Yeah, so similarly, you know how when you create a resource claim template for, say, GPU type, right? You wouldn't have to create so many GPU resource claims. You just say, hey, as long as it's with the same
Right.
same
You're
GPU.
getting to, yeah, I remember now your question on Slack, and you're talking
Right.
about,
Whereas now it's like, let's take TPU and IMAX channel for NVIDIA as an example. Anytime there's a new TPU or new IMAX channel, the user has to go create that claim, that resource claim every single time, versus having some kind of constraint that just says, hey, as long as these two nodes share the same TPU or share the same IMAX channel, right? Like that logic. I don't know if that's possible, but
no, the problem is it might be possible. We have to think about it. The problem is that that we don't have, the problem is with the scheduler. The scheduler is a pod scheduler, and it's a one pod at a time scheduler. And yes, there's things like anti-affinity and affinity and kind of a rough way of doing multi-pod scheduling, gang scheduling, but it's fundamentally not part of the architecture of the scheduler. Like, it's just not how it works. And so I'm concerned trying to layer multi-claim across, like we snuck it in the side door a little bit with DRA, with resource claims being accessible by multiple pods, both by multiple pods and by multiple nodes, but it's still doing one at a time. See you later, Antonio. So I think it's worth looking at. I'm concerned that it's trying to shoehorn more stuff in a schedule that can't handle it. And our alternative we've talked about in this community and in others is, can we build, if you look at something like Q, the way Q is doing something like this is they use a scheduling gate, and then they can make the decisions ahead of time before handing it off to the scheduler. Cluster autoscaler, potentially things that can look at larger workloads, like a multi-workload scheduler could do something like that more easily. So maybe we can provide an API that those schedulers can use. I'm worried about trying to implement it in the current Cube scheduler, and anything we do has to be able to be implemented there too, because it's only looking at one pod at a time. But I mean, we can think it through. Like, we should think it through. So what you're talking about is, yeah, like constraints that span claims. Right now, constraints span requests within the same claim, not claims. I think what you're asking for is that. I see two hands. I don't know. I think Jack was first, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to speak to Rita's observation about, so if we're using the resource slice that is a node selector, every time a new, say, IMAX channel or whatever, some boundary that represents more than one node comes online, it is correct that that new resource slice needs to materialize. But we could, if we were able to standardize an approach, we could advocate with the DRA plugin community of authors and say, when you instantiate a new boundary of a thing across nodes, create a new resource slice automatically that has the node selector in it, so that workload authors don't have to do that manually, and they can simply program against the interface.
So my plan, and I think Kevin's plan for cross-node resources, is it's a separate controller. So I know from Google Cloud, when somebody allocates a TPU slice, that's a multi-node TPU thing, that's a GCE API resource. I have a controller running that can populate the resource slice. So there's no human has to do anything. Where a human has to do is when they write their pod spec, they have to point to a resource claim that says, I need a 4x4, and which is 16 node, right? And then if there's 10 of those available in this cluster, it gets scheduled to one of them, which then constrains the pod to land on one of those 16 nodes. And the next pod that comes along points at the same resource claim, and therefore gets constrained to the same 16 nodes. And then I think I have to secondarily consume the individual chips. So I think I need two resource claims, one for the multi-node topological shape, and one for the set of chips specifically on the node, which is awkward. but I think can work, right? Getting back to what we were talking about earlier, like how do we do it today versus how could we do it if we had a better system? I think that's how we do it today. I haven't tried it, but I think it would work. There might be some race conditions where if somebody consumes chips without consuming the multi-node resource, it could cause like it gets back to that sort of multi-scheduler thing. It's kind of somebody screwed up. So we might need a webhook to ensure that, hey, you're consuming chips out of this. So you need to also consume the thing and reject them. So like there might be some additional work we have to do to make it not cause breakage, but I think it's doable. So the question is, you know, that's different than what I think Rita was asking for, the multi-claim constraints. So I don't know. I think it gets, maybe it gets back to Jack's point. We need to like write down, here's the use cases, here's the tools we have now to solve them. Do we need something better? Yeah, awesome. Munich?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm from AWS, so I was just wanted to bring up the match expressions, the extension which was part of the KEP, the original KEP. So is this something planned as part of the 1.33 release, or can we bring it in? We are open to collaborating on it.
So what I would ask is, I think you're the ones with the strongest use case for that. So
Yeah.
if it's something you want to do, like jump in and participate. It has to be a separate KEP, unfortunately, because of it's a new field, and a new field then, right, is a new API that has to have its own FeatureGate lifecycle. But if you look at how we're doing the admin access KEP or something like that, it doesn't have to be super complicated. You'll have to have your motivating use cases. So yeah, I mean, we're totally, the pool is open, you know, jump in.
Wow.
But as I mentioned earlier, I thought we have 7 to 8 weeks. 8 weeks is really probably pushing it. I doubt we have 8 weeks. We probably have more like 6 to 7 weeks. Just based on past, I think in last year, it was like around February 5th or 7th or something that the enhancements freeze happened. It should happen roughly, our cadence is pretty matched month to month, year to year at this point. So it should happen around the same time. And that means you have to get the KEP written well ahead of time. If you haven't done one of these before, it's not rocket science. Well, it's software engineering, but it is what it is, and it's some work, but it's kind of socializing it with everybody here. But totally open to it, but you'll have to drive it if you want it to happen, because it's not on anybody else's radar as a strong need.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Who would be the point of contacts if I had any questions on this?
You can reach out to me. I'm fine. Yeah. I mean, I'll be gone for 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year's, but you can reach out in the next 2 weeks to me, or after that. I'd be happy to help you out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else? Any other comments on what we've been discussing, or new topics in the next 13 minutes? Okay, then I will see you all in, I guess, 4 weeks. I'm going to cancel the next meeting. And in the new year, have a great new year, everybody, and see you later.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Bye.